sheriffs or police or nothing.
They gotta go today. Well,
Sir, you cannot.
they can record all they want.
So you need to go to a lawyer.
They can record all they want. They getting out today.
Right, you hear that, Miss Sutton, right? So you need to put in a report. Wait for the police to come.
Okay.
Okay, you can get all that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We gotta start packing stuff up today.
Identified a suspect after 2 of 3 victims were found shot dead in a Wilson neighborhood Monday afternoon. Wilson officers were called to the 900 block of Washington Street for reported gunfire around 2 p.m. Officers say 3 victims were shot: 44-year-old Natasha Sutton, 21-year-old Avantae Pender, and 37-year-old Tiffany Fogg. Police say Sutton and Pender died at the scene, while Fogg was taken to the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. Police say 39-year-old Donta Chestnut was identified as the suspect. Chestnut was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted first-degree murder. The suspect is the director of the nonprofit R. Wilson. Its mission is focused on providing Wilson's young people with mentorship and opportunities for a better life, according to its website.
Everything feels normal until a knock at the door changes everything. Moments later, gunfire shatters the peace. A devoted mother and her 21-year-old son are dead. 2 other relatives are wounded, and the man accused of pulling the trigger, the last person anyone expected. A respected community leader who preached against the very violence he's now accused of committing. What could push a man with that reputation to such an unthinkable act? How does a landlord-tenant dispute explode into a double murder that shakes an entire city? And what secrets will investigators uncover as they dig deeper into this case? And just when it seemed this case couldn't get any more shocking, 38-year-old Tiffany Monique Chestnut, the sister of accused shooter Donta Chestnut, now faces charges of accessory after the fact to first-degree murder and tampering with evidence. Investigators say she picked up a broken piece of the handgun used in the killings and handed it back to her brother as he fled, allegedly helping him escape and interfering with crucial evidence. She is being held on a $30,000 bond and will appear in Wilson County Court in the coming days. Stay with us as we uncover the heartbreaking story of Natasha Sutton and Avantae Pender. 2 lives cut short on what should have been just another ordinary afternoon, and explore the shocking unraveling of the man this community thought they could trust. This is a story of family, betrayal, and a neighborhood forever changed. And by the end, you might find yourself asking, could something like this happen where you live? Welcome to True Crime Diaries, a place where we uncover shocking cases, unsolved mysteries, and the darkest corners of real-life crime. From headline-making events to hidden investigation details, we break it all down so you can understand what really happened. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notification so you are first to know when a new case is published. These are real people, real tragedies, and real lessons we can't afford to ignore. Share this video with someone you care about. It might change a life or save one. Let's dive in. Natasha Sutton was the kind of woman who quietly held her family together through good times and bad. At 44, she had already seen her share of hardship, but those who knew her say she faced every challenge with determination. Friends describe her as someone who never gave up, no matter how difficult life became. She was known for her warm smile and her ability to comfort others, even when she was the one struggling. Natasha worked hard to make sure her children had food on the table and a roof over their heads. Her home was more than just 4 walls. It was where her family gathered for Sunday dinners, where laughter echoed in the kitchen, and where she encouraged her kids to chase their dreams. Her son, Avantae Pender, was just 21 years old and on the verge of stepping into adulthood with big plans. Those close to him say he had a natural sense of responsibility, the kind that made him want to do better not just for himself, but for those he loved. Avantae had been exploring options for his future, and family members said he wanted to build a stable life and provide for those who depended on him. He enjoyed spending time with friends, playing sports, and was the kind of person who could light up a room with his presence. His relatives remember him as respectful, easygoing, and full of potential. Together, Natasha and Avantae were more than mother and son. They were teammates in life. Neighbors often saw them outside talking, laughing, or running errands together. Natasha relied on Avantae's help around the house, and he looked to her for advice and encouragement. Their bond was close, shaped by years of facing life side by side. Their sudden deaths left a deep void for those who knew them. Natasha's surviving children, extended family, and friends have spoken about how difficult it is to imagine life without her steady guidance. Avantae's peers struggle with the thought of a young life cut short, just as he was preparing to step into his future. What makes this tragedy so painful is not just that 2 lives were lost, but that they were lives full of promise, cut down before they could see what was waiting for them next. September 15th, 2025, began like any other Monday in Wilson, North Carolina. The late summer sun cast a warm glow over Washington Street, and the neighborhood carried its usual quiet hum. Children were coming home from school, a few neighbors were tending to their yards, and the day seemed to promise nothing out of the ordinary. Inside the Sutton home, Natasha and her family were spending an ordinary afternoon together, cooking, talking, going about their daily routines. Sometime after 2 p.m., that ordinary calm was interrupted. According to witnesses, a vehicle pulled up outside the house. Moments later, voices were heard, firm at first, then louder, more urgent. It was Donta Chestnut, the family's landlord, arriving to speak with Natasha. The conversation, according to neighbors, quickly turned tense. What started as a discussion became a heated argument. Inside the house, Avantae was present and, like any protective son, stepped in to support his mother. The exchange grew louder, echoing out into the street, until neighbors say they heard shouting. And then came the sound that would stay with them forever, the sharp, cracking noise of gunfire. Panic spread quickly. Some neighbors ducked for cover. Others rushed to call 911. Inside, chaos unfolded in seconds. Natasha and Avantae were struck, their lives ending almost instantly. 2 other family members, Tiffany Fogg and Tyron Sutton, were also hit but survived their wounds. When police arrived, they found a house that had turned into a crime scene. Emergency responders rushed the injured to the hospital. Neighbors stood outside in shock, some crying, some frozen as they tried to piece together what had just happened. The entire street was blocked off by police tape, a sight almost surreal to those who lived there. Meanwhile, Chestnut fled the scene. A search began immediately, with law enforcement spreading out across Wilson. Officers located him not far from the house and quickly placed him under arrest. He was taken into custody without further violence, but the shock of the moment lingered in the air long after he was gone. By evening, word of the shooting had spread throughout Wilson. Family members began to gather, some collapsing into each other's arms as they learned what had happened. The sun set on a neighborhood forever changed, leaving behind the quiet aftermath. Sirens fading into the distance, flashing lights reflecting off windows, in a community struggling to process a tragedy that had unfolded in the space of just a few minutes. Donta Maurice Chestnut was not a stranger to the Wilson community. In fact, he was one of its most visible figures. At 39 years old, Chestnut had built a reputation as a man who cared about the future of his city. He founded Our Wilson, a local nonprofit focused on mentoring youth, organizing community events, and encouraging young people to stay away from gangs and gun violence. He attended town meetings, spoke passionately about building safer neighborhoods, and was seen as a role model for many. Neighbors and residents say Chestnut was charismatic and persuasive, the kind of person who could command a room with his words. He had a way of making people believe things could get better. For years, he stood on stages and in church basements, urging others to put down their weapons and resolve disputes peacefully. That is what makes the accusations against him so unsettling. The very man who spoke against bloodshed is now accused of taking 2 lives. Police reports state that Chestnut was the landlord of the Sutton family and had gone to the home on Washington Street that day for reasons that remain under investigation. Witnesses claim that a disagreement about money may have been in the center of the confrontation, but investigators have not released a formal statement on the motive. After the shooting, Chestnut attempted to leave the area, but was located and arrested later that day. According to law enforcement, he faces 2 counts of first-degree murder, along with multiple counts of attempted first-degree murder for the surviving victims. His sister, Tiffany Monique Chestnut, was later charged as an accessory after the fact for allegedly helping him after the shooting. The news of his arrest spread quickly through Wilson, leaving many in disbelief. For those who had worked alongside him in community programs, it was almost impossible to reconcile the man they knew with the man now behind bars. Some described feeling betrayed, while others urged patience and due process, reminding neighbors that everyone is innocent until proven guilty. What is certain is that the case has cast a shadow over Wilson. People are now left to question how someone who worked so hard to be a symbol of peace could be accused of such an act. Whether this was a moment of anger, a dispute gone horribly wrong, or something more complicated, the truth will now be left to the courts to determine. The investigation into the deaths of Natasha Sutton and Avantae Pender began within minutes of the shooting. Wilson police immediately secured the scene, collecting shell casings, taking witness statements, and documenting every detail of the small house where the tragedy occurred. Detectives went door to door, asking neighbors what they saw and heard. Some reported hearing shouting moments before the gunfire, while others said they saw Donta Chestnut's vehicle parked outside just before the incident. Authorities quickly identified Chestnut as the suspect and located him later that day. He was arrested without incident and taken to the Wilson County Jail. From there, the focus shifted to building a case that could stand up in court. Crime scene technicians worked late into the night, photographing blood patterns, bullet holes, and collecting any physical evidence that might show exactly what happened and in what order. As the investigation unfolded, the question of motive loomed large. While police have not officially released a full explanation, relatives of the victims told local news outlets that the confrontation began over unpaid rent and the threat of eviction. According to their accounts, Chestnut arrived angry, demanding payment or threatening to remove the family from the property. Those closest to Natasha say she was trying to negotiate or de-escalate the situation when it turned violent. Investigators have been careful not to confirm too many details publicly, perhaps to protect the integrity of the upcoming trial. Still, Court records show that Chestnut faces 2 counts of first-degree murder and 2 counts of attempted first-degree murder, charges that suggest prosecutors believe the shootings were intentional rather than accidental. Adding another layer to the case, police arrested Chestnut's sister, Tiffany Monique Chestnut, days later. She was charged as an accessory after the fact, accused of helping him try to hide or retrieve part of the gun used in the killings. Her arrest has deepened the sense that this was not a spur-of-the-moment incident, but a situation with multiple steps that investigators are still piecing together. For now, the community is left waiting for answers. Why did a dispute about money escalate to this level? Could have been prevented. The investigation continues to explore those questions. Prosecutors are preparing for what is likely to be a high-profile trial, and every development will be watched closely by those still grieving. The days following the shooting were some of the most emotional Wilson had seen in years. Almost immediately, neighbors began leaving flowers, candles, and handwritten notes on the steps of the Sutton home. By the second night, a small vigil had formed, with family members, friends, and strangers gathering to pray, light candles, and share memories. Some spoke quietly through tears, others hugged tightly, and a few simply stood in silence, struggling to understand how such violence could strike so close to home. For Natasha's surviving children and relatives, the grief was almost unbearable. They remembered her as the heart of their family, the person who kept everyone together. Friends spoke about Avantae's laughter, his plans for the future, and how unfair it felt that someone so young would never get the chance to live out his dreams. But the shock didn't end with mourning. Many in Wilson were stunned to learn that the man accused was someone they had trusted. For years, Donta Chestnut had been held up as an example of positive change. Some community members expressed feelings of betrayal, unable to reconcile the image of a mentor and nonprofit founder with the allegations against him. Others were conflicted, urging patience and caution before rushing to judgment. They reminded their neighbors that courts, not rumors, decide guilt. Social media in Wilson filled with debates, some demanding justice for Natasha and Avantae, others expressing sorrow for Chestnut's fall from grace, and many simply asking, why? Churches in the area organized prayer circles for everyone affected, the Sutton family, the survivors, and even for Chestnut and his loved ones. Pastors preached about forgiveness, accountability, and the urgent need to address the root causes of conflict before they turn deadly. The case has also sparked larger conversations about housing struggles, eviction disputes, and the tensions that can arise between landlords and tenants in difficult economic times. Local leaders have promised to explore new ways to mediate conflicts before they reach a breaking point. For now, Wilson remains in a state of quiet grief, waiting for justice and hoping that lessons can be learned from a tragedy that claimed 2 lives, shattered a family, and left a community forever changed. As the days pass, the police tape has been removed, the flashing lights are gone, and Washington Street is quiet again. But the silence feels different now. The house where the shooting happened still stands, but for many in Wilson, it has become a symbol of the pain left behind. It is a reminder of how quickly an ordinary day can turn into a nightmare, and how fragile the line between life and death can be when anger and fear collide. Natasha Sutton's absence is deeply felt. She was the anchor of her family, the person everyone turned to for advice, comfort, and love. Her death has left a hole that no one can fill. Her son, Avantae, should have had decades ahead of him. Time to work, to raise his child, to grow into the man he wanted to be. Instead, his name will now forever be attached to a story of tragedy. For the city of Wilson, this case is not just about what happened inside one home. It is about what it says about the struggles many people face. Housing insecurity, financial stress, and personal disputes are common issues, but when they go unresolved, they can create pressure that eventually explodes. The upcoming trial will likely be long and emotional, with prosecutors laying out evidence and defense attorneys trying to tell their client's side. No verdict, however, will bring Natasha and Avantae back. Justice, when it comes, will be a step toward closure, but never a full healing of the wound this has left. This story forces us to ask difficult questions. How can communities prevent conflicts from reaching this point? How can people who are supposed to be role models avoid becoming part of the violence they speak against? And how can neighbors come together to make sure families like the Suttons never have to face such a fate again? In the end, this tragedy is a call to action, a reminder that we cannot ignore the warning signs, that we must find peaceful solutions before tempers boil over, and that every life lost is one too many. Natasha and Avantae's names deserve to be remembered, not just as victims, but as a mother and son whose story might help prevent the next act of senseless violence. Natasha Sutton and Avantae Pender were more than just names in a headline. They were a mother and son with dreams, with futures, with a family who loved them. Their lives were stolen in minutes, over a dispute that should never have turned deadly. As Wilson waits for justice, this case is a grim reminder of how quickly anger can turn into tragedy, and how no community is immune to senseless violence. That's a wrap on today's case. But the story doesn't stop here. There are countless voices still unheard, stories still in the shadows, and truths still waiting to be uncovered. Here at True Crime Diaries, we're dedicated to digging deep, exposing the facts, honoring the victims, and keeping their memories alive. Hit subscribe, like this video, turn on notifications so you're always first to know when a new case drops. Thank you for watching. See you on the next one.